Here's what's going to really bring us down. I got a picture sent to me from a friend. It's a menu of Perry's Steakhouse. That's a steakhouse in Dallas, a good steakhouse. But at the top of the menu, she took this picture. It said, temporary dinner menu due to supply chain shortages and resulting pricing. This is a steakhouse. How long is a steakhouse going to be able to charge for an 8-ounce filet? $45. A 6-ounce filet, $40. It's affecting everything. Now, that is a nice steakhouse, but not for a 6-ounce filet. Here's what's happening. You are starting to see inflation, and everyone says that inflation is fine. In fact, Janet Yellen said over the weekend that Joe Biden needs to push forward with his $6 trillion budget and $4 trillion spending plan, even if they trigger inflation that persists into the next year and higher interest rates. If we end up with higher interest rate environment, it would actually be a plus for society's point of view and the Fed's point of view. Now, how could that possibly be a good thing? Well, because redistribution of wealth. It helps a bit, quoting, to alleviate things. And it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Well, what is it that we're talking about alleviating? We're talking about changing the structure of everything as we know it. In fact, one of the opinions, and I think this comes from, I guess this is from Market Watch. So this is CBS Market Watch. A slight increase in the rate of inflation in the United States and Europe have triggered financial market anxieties. Has U.S. President Joe Biden's administration risked overheating the economy with $1.9 trillion rescue package and then plans for additional spending to invest in infrastructure, job creation, bolstering American families? Conservatives blame this situation on excessively generous unemployment insurance benefits. But the econometric studies comparing labor supply across the U.S. states suggest that these kinds of labor disincentive effects are limited. Rather than panicking about inflation, we should be worrying about what is happening to the aggregate demand when funds provided by fiscal relief packages dry up. Many of those at the bottom of the income and wealth distribution have accumulated large debts, including some cases more than a year's worth of debt in arrears. The instinct to fight inflation is embedded in the central bank's DNA. If they don't see inflation as a risk, neither should you. So what does that say? You know what that says? That says trust the experts, because the experts know. You know what's really funny is I am a little bit of a history buff, and I have studied these very things: revolution, changes in countries that seemingly happen overnight, hyperinflation, anti-Semitism, Marxism. I've been studying this now for over 20 years. So I think I can bring a little something to the table. And today I want to bring to the table a guy named Rudolf von Havenstein. You may not know his name. Most people in Germany did not know his name. At least in about 1920, 1919, they didn't know his name. By 1922, everyone knew his name. It's kind of like if you go on the street and you say, "Who is Janet Yellen?" They'll have no idea. Oh, you will. You will. Here's what happened. This guy was the expert on money. And in my research, I have found that the hyperinflation wasn't about saying, screw you to the Allies when they wanted payment. It wasn't about that. He actually believed that this was going to work. What was it that he was going to do? Well, there was a problem in Germany. The people were demoralized. They were tired. There was this breakneck pace of things that were coming and changing. People didn't have a purpose anymore. It seemed like everything was meaningless. It seemed like the country was kind of meaningless. And they were watching the average Joe or the average Helga was watching their position slip. And others who seemed to be connected, their riches were growing. Well, he knew that had to stop. That had to stop. Well, there was all kinds of problems, and well, the government wanted to make sure that they could help the average Joe. So they started spending more and more and more money. The problem was nobody, in 1920, the German mark was probably one of the, if not the top 3 leaders of currency in the world, most valuable. That changed kind of quickly because the government started to spend money and the taxes couldn't be raised to pay for it, but they knew they had to spend all of this money, otherwise there would be trouble. And so Rudolf von Hohenstein, he decides to do something, well, it was crazy. It was crazy. He thought the central bank should just buy. All of the debt from the government. They should just buy it all. And if there was any kind of trouble or anybody was collapsing, they should buy that as well. Then, on top of it, they would just print a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Does any of this sound familiar? Because what Hohenstein did is what we now call quantitative easing. Let me just put, bullcrap into English. Printing more and more money. We're not printing money. No, we're digitizing it. They couldn't do that in the 1930s. So what happened? Economic breakdown, hyperinflation, weaker institutions, and a destabilization of all of German politics. Now, does any of that sound like something that maybe a portion of this country, I always thought it was maybe, in the vast minority. But now it seems to be the majority of people in Washington, D.C. Does that sound like a goal to anyone? Economic breakdown. Well, that goes to the Great Reset. Got to have that. Weaker institutions. Oh, nobody believes in any institution anymore. And the destabilization of German politics. Oh, my gosh. Well, I don't know if we want to destabilize German politics, but American politics, well, they should be destabilized, right? At the same time all of this was happening, everybody was getting rich on the stock market. Well, when I say everybody, I don't mean everybody. The turnover in the sales of stocks and bonds on the open market, their version of Wall Street, it was doing such a high volume. It was going through, the stock market was going through the roof, all-time high, and an all-time high volume. Everybody was in the stock market. It was so bad that several days a week, their Wall Street, the Bourse, was having to close just to handle all of the paperwork. But don't worry, we have computers that do that now, so we don't have to close. All of the marks that existed in the world in the summer of 1922, all of the marks that existed in the world in the summer of 1922, by November of 1923, all of the marks in the entire world. 1 year later, all of those marks could not buy a single newspaper or a tram ticket. When this hits hard and it hits fast. So Janet Yellen says that inflation will be a good thing. When you are going for the grocery store and you are going to the meat counter and meat is costing you what it costs now, do you think inflation is a good thing? Yesterday, it took me, $103 to fill my truck at the gas station? $103 to fill my truck? Do you think that's a good thing? See, Janet Yellen and the Biden administration are looking at, well, not you, but you as a collective. Yes, the little people are going to have a hard time, but don't worry about it. In the end, it's going to be better. Well, first of all, I don't think you're right about it being better. I think your better means more control. I think your better means an abandonment of the Constitution. I think your better actually includes the violation of your charter as the Fed. Your charter is to, what? Come on, say it with me. Make sure inflation is under control. You're already twice as much inflation as you say is good for the economy. You're supposed to keep it at 2%. It's now at 4.2%, and that's how we calculate it today. If we calculated it like we did under Ronald Reagan, it would be at 15% inflation. And the people feel it. No matter how much you say, the people feel it. Let me give you something that, and I hate this guy because I don't think he means it, but he's right on this. Henry Ford said, the reason why we're a success, none of our men are experts. We have most unfortunately found it necessary to get rid of a man as soon as he thinks himself an expert, because no one ever considers himself an expert if he really knows his job. A man who knows his job sees so much more to be done than he has ever done, and is always pressing forward and never gives up in an instant of thought to say, wow, look how efficient I am. I'm an expert. The moment one gets into the expert state of mind, a great number of things become impossible. We are run by experts now, and I don't believe they're experts. They're arrogant, out-of-control egomaniacs who pass cookies out that look like their face.